With one of Coach Combs' favorite lines, today wasn't a good day, it was a great day at Ohio State. So it was exciting. I felt confident last night going to bed, and some of you guys probably saw my tweet that we didn't want any drama here today, and there wasn't. So that was always a good sign on signing day. Just to take 20 seconds, there's a lot of hands that go into the whole recruiting operation, and especially during the season when coaches are busy with game planning and getting prepared for our opponents. I want to really thank my right-hand man, Aaron Hodges. This guy is a superstar in the profession. He's been with us for over a year now, and he's got a really bright future. Tim Hinton has been really great to rely upon as all of his experience as a college and high school coach. So I really appreciate his knowledge and expertise in helping with recruiting. My guys Anthony Coughlin and Ed Terwilliger have also in my office that do a great job for me. In the front office, the girls Katie, Megan, Taylor, and Alex are really helpful in setting up all the visits for us. This past year we hired Zach Swartz, as Coach mentioned, to do all our social media. It was a home run hire. He's exceeded all expectations with his job, as you guys all follow on social media. And then our two Jedis, Sam Silverman and Ken Stufflebeam, have been, here for a couple years now, and those guys are the best in the business is what they do. And finally, also thank the Sasso staff, strength and conditioning staff, Ryan Stamper with his Real Life Wednesdays, our creativity team that meets every morning at 7 a.m. to help with recruiting materials, and then I'm missing other people, but Gene Smith as well for all of his support and taking the time to meet with prospects when we need him to. So that being said, be happy to answer questions.
Right here in front. Nope.
Mark, can you describe how much bigger and more complex and ambitious your department is compared to when you started here?
Yeah, when I first started, 10 years ago in this business, it was almost a one-man operation, and now all those names I just read off, we're talking about a recruiting army. And even here now, it's expanded. When I first got here, it was really just Greg Gillum and I kind of doing the majority of stuff, and as the number of players to watch expands, as the social media expands, as the nationwide search expands, you have to keep adding, and now even the social media team is a team within themselves. So I think this operation is only going to continue to evolve and continue to grow, and just the nature of recruiting that keeps evolving and taking place.
Mark, when you talk about all those things and the way you guys have expanded and added and evolved, where is it left for this to go? What is the next wave of this?
I think the next wave is you're going to see it become have more personnel-specific departments like the NFL. I think you're going to start seeing, there's already 2 or 3 schools that have titles of general manager, and then you're going to see, just 20 people in a personnel office just cutting up film and doing film evals, and so I think that's going to be the next step, and it's just going to keep growing from there.
Is any part of that hard to believe or trouble? I don't know how you evaluate it yourself, that it's changed so much in 10 years, and if it continues to grow, I don't know, do you think that that's good for the game?
I think any time that the support staff can assist the coaches and make their lives easier is a great thing, so they can focus on our current team and games during the season. But at some point, when is it going to become too big? There's going to be places like Ohio State that can afford to have these massive armies, and other schools may not. So, but I think it is helpful. The larger our staff is, the more information we can find out about kids and do the research, and be well equipped in helping our coaches make informed decisions.
Mark, I would imagine when you got to Ohio State, you had a vision for what you wanted Ohio State recruiting to look like. Today's class with all the 5 stars, relatively little drama. How close is this class to that vision?
In the perfect world, it looks great on paper. For any class, I think you really don't know until 3 years from now. The 2013 class, if we're standing up here today, we didn't know Zeke Elliott was Zeke Elliott and Darren Lee would be Darren Lee. And so, on paper, you're most proud and confident of the type of kids they are and the families they come from, that they're going to be successful because of that. So in that case, we feel outstanding for the type of kids we've signed and how talented they are on film, that we expect them to come in ready to play.
Is it too simple to say that the national title 2 years ago and the NFL draft a year ago, I would imagine those were kind of the 2 pillars of what you saw?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Where, in my opinion, that, starting with the national championship, and then, almost a year ago in April at the NFL draft, seeing all those guys walk across stage has really lifted our platform, probably on a more national level, to be able to open these kids' eyes a little bit more to Ohio State.
Middle, Brian?
Just a tremendous amount of this class, starting with Sean, obviously, back in the title game, has been committed, for more than a year, upwards of 18 months. And a lot of those guys, they wasn't just like guys like Josh Myers as out-of-state guys too. What type of work goes into keeping that many guys committed for that long when they're that type of caliber of prospect? You've got all these other schools know who to target, in trying to get them to flip. Just what was that process like for you?
Yeah, anytime a kid commits, you almost have to keep reminding yourself to recruit them as they're not committed, because you always want to make sure you're showing love, because the other schools aren't backing off. So, sometimes I know if we lose out on a kid, it may make us start recruiting them harder, even though he commits to another school. And so we have to remind ourselves that just because someone's committed, we really got to treat and, show the love that they deserve. Anytime you get out of the, our 8-hour radius, the percentages go way down. So those are the guys that we really have to focus on, and we're going to be in a fight till that name comes through the fax machine or on signing day. So Sean Wade, and specifically, we have not had a great track record down in Jacksonville with kids who have committed to us. So give him and his family a lot of credit for sticking firm. He took a lot of trips, and we even encouraged him to take his trips. But at the end of the day, we said, you pick what you feel is the best, and he picked Ohio State because of that. So we're really proud of his family and Sean for sticking with it.
Mark, 21 signees, it's a relatively small class for you guys. What do the numbers look like for 2018? You think it'll be a bigger class?
I was looking at it today. I think we have, I forget the number of seniors. I want to say more than the 14 seniors maybe going into next year. First, this year we had 5, so we knew that was going to be small as it is. So we have a bigger starting ground. In our eyes, there's probably going to be, as usual, guys who leave early for the NFL draft, so we keep some of those names in mind as projections. But I think you'll always see us get to at least 20, and then the big years to 25.
You talk about names with the 2018 class. I know you guys have 2 verbal commitments. Do you feel like a rash of commitments is coming in that class? Because I know last year you guys had 10 commitments already for the 2017 class.
Yeah, the coaches, they just finishing up this class, so now their focus is on the 18 class. And we have all the film prepared for them now, so they can start going and do their true evaluations on the 18 guys. So I think as they get their lists in order of how they rank them, I think during the spring is when you start to see the guys will really start to push for commitments and through the summer to get a good foundation of the class.
Urban mentioned it, but the NCAA might look at the early signing period in December, might vote on that in the spring. And for a guy like Elijah Gardner, if you were a year younger, this might end up way different. For that type of player and for your recruiting efforts, do you expect the landscape to change at all?
Yeah, I think it will. I'm interested to see how many kids will actually decide to sign in December if they have that opportunity. In the positive aspect is, the J.K. Dobbins of the world, you don't have to worry about recruiting them for, a couple more weeks until they get here. The negative is if a kid signs with another school, that coach leaves, position coach leaves, school gets in trouble, then what's going to be the procedures for that? So there's still some questions on how it's all going to happen when it does happen. So it will affect the landscape and affect how timing of official visits when we want to bring them in, because we may try to get kids in that very last weekend now before that signing date, be the last visit on their mind. So that's things we got to keep in mind and consider.
And then if it's December, you're still preparing for a bowl game at this point.
Absolutely.
How do you mitigate your timing?
Yeah, I think just like any visit during the season, the coaches are going to be getting prepared for the bowl game, and then, myself and my staff will have the large chunk of the visit on our hands, and we'll just have to make sure the kids have a great time as we do now.
With 15 guys leaving early for the NFL in the last 2 years, has that put more pressure on you to get guys who can play right away?
Yeah, every year we expect guys to be on that track to leave early, and so there's some pressure to make sure when you lose a Darren Lee, you better bring in someone just as good or the team's not as good. So you always have to try to equate the talent that you lose with what you bring in. And then every year there may be 1 or 2 guys that leave that you're not projecting to leave. So in that case, kind of where we're wide receivers this year, we weren't sure on a couple guys what caused that last second scramble with Elijah Gardner. But we always want to have a pair and a spare ready, for the worst case scenarios, to where it's not just try to quickly find someone at the last second, but we have some list of guys ready just in case something were to go down.
Has anything changed though in that regard over the last couple of years?
I don't think so. I mean, since day one, we always want to recruit guys that not only are great kids who want to do great things after football, but who want to play in the NFL. And so those are the kids we're looking for from day one, and then we're going to continue to do that.
Laura?
I know they came in very late in the process, but did the coaching staff changes have any impact on your recruiting in terms of, you had to transition a little bit?
Sure.
And I'm sure they've had different territories and whatnot.
Sure.
But you guys made it seem seamless.
Yeah, Tim Beck, give him a lot of credit. He did an outstanding job in the state of Texas with Barron and Jeffrey, and even with Sean Wade in Jacksonville. So when you're very familiar with the prospect and their families, and you have a change like that, you always want to make sure that you're on top of things, and the position coach can jump right in there. And the great thing that Tim did and Luke did, they were always very upfront and honest with these kids and their families. There was no deception, no hiding. When they knew they were going to be leaving, they were very upfront with the family. So I think the families really appreciate that and made the switch a lot easier.
Maybe more of an urban question, and if it is, I'm sorry, but when you help to arrange the recruitment of a quarterback, and you're getting guys out of Las Vegas and Texas, is there any emphasis on, hey, let's get some film of them playing in Ohio-type weather, or is the philosophy that a quarterback that can throw in a desert can throw in an Arctic?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard to simulate, obviously, so it's hard to project that. I don't know what the right answer is into how you would evaluate that, but I do know when we did recruit Joey Burrow, who was not a very highly recruited guy, but there was a lot of emphasis placed on him versus the other one or two kids we were recruiting. This kid's played in Ohio, he's played in the cold, he knows what the rivalry means, and so that really helped Joe's stock in our eyes. So in that case, him versus a kid who maybe we saw as an equal talent in Texas or whoever it was, Joe got extra bonus for in our eyes because of those reasons.
And final few questions, Ari.
So when you guys are putting together a class, you guys have 7 out of 21 commits from Ohio. In your mind, you guys have the best class in the history of the program maybe right now, but do you think there's enough Ohio in there?
No, it wasn't. Not enough Ohio. That's something we want our percentage to be much higher on. There's too much talent in the state, but at the same time, we're also searching for the best players in the country. So we always have to keep reminding ourselves, Ohio kids are our first priority. They will be. Sometimes we probably over-evaluate them because those are the kids we get to camp so many times. We know all about, versus a kid out of state. So we trust me, we place so much emphasis on the state of Ohio, and we're going to continue to and do our best to get the best players out of the state of Ohio.
A lot about the NFL draft and the national championship you guys won, but you know as well as anybody that this class, from a number standpoint, with the 5 stars that you have in, is dramatically the best class you guys have put together. Why now, in your mind? Why do you think it all came together in year 5 or 6 it is now for Urban, and what kind of made it all mesh at the same time right now?
Yeah, I think the 3 things are, 1, the national championship 2 years ago, and then last year with the NFL draft, and then finally just the evolvement and success of our Real Life Wednesday program, to not only be able to say, here's what we do, and have these great speakers who speak to our team, but to then show Billy Price doing an internship with Nike, to have Joe Burr, Austin Mack, Sam Hubbard go to Goldman Sachs in New York. And so now these are testimonies. Like, this is our guys actually do this, instead of just having guys speak and giving us great information. But now we have guys in the real world doing these great internships. I think, that was huge for, Barron and Jeffrey and among others. And I think between those 3 different things I just mentioned is the huge success we've had.
And left there with Doug.
Did Beck try to recruit Browning and Okuda at Texas after he left Texas?
Not that I'm aware.
Is that a worry? Like when that happens, are you if he's a lead recruiter on those kids and he goes to the state school?
I think there's always, just the respect factor. He's got a job to do down there too. So they did go see JK. That was no surprise to us. So.
How are you on numbers? I think we have you at 89 with this class and the guys on the current roster.
Yeah, I'm not even sure where today puts us as, but we will be at 85 come August when we need to be.
Okay. And you guys had a kid on a visit recently cited for marijuana possession. How does that happen?
We educate our players as much as we can, and we try to do as much research on prospects before we even bring them up here, and I guess mistakes happen with the number of kids we bring up here. We don't want it to happen, and it's not a good reflection on us either. So we do as much homework as we can to avoid those situations, but we got a bad deal on that one.
Is there any worry though about like whoever was hosting him or the guys on your end?
I mean, we don't really. I mean, it's not a worry. I mean, obviously we worry every day about kids. It's college. We don't want our players doing that sort of things. But it's not something we go to sleep every night worried about that kids are going to have issues like that. We have a lot of trust in our kids, and we constantly remind them every day. Our coaches do. So we feel confident in the type of kids we bring in the program and that they make right decisions.
Right here in front, Tim.
Yeah, Mark, maybe y'all would have to work so hard if y'all weren't still cutting up film. Is Elijah Gardner a great example of the depth of the book that you guys keep or that you accumulate? Can you just take me in a brief thing of first hearing about him to like having Urban Meyer go to Kemp, Texas, along with, I think Kevin Wilson made that trip too.
Yeah, Aaron, who I mentioned before, he was the one who actually found Elijah, just searching through names, and when the coaches, it was on a Sunday, Coach Meyer was in the office, and we started showing him some of these receivers that we had found, and Elijah was one of them. A guy we were very interested in then. We just figured we needed to get to know. So Kevin was down the first week to go see him with Zach Smith, and they liked his physical appearance, got great feedback from the high school coach, and so then that next week is when we decided to fly Coach Meyer in, and he felt the same way those guys did, decided to bring him here on a visit, which was almost like a job interview for him, getting him around our players, constantly asking our players what he was like with them, just to make sure, again, we want to make sure we bring in the right type of kid, and all the boxes checked out positively for him, and we're glad he's a Buckeye.
Doug just asked you about an incident that happened on a recruiting trip here, but I'm just wondering, how much of a scramble, as you look back on it now, was it to get that third receiver, if that's what you want to call it, in this class? I mean, because y'all went through almost a Rolodex of names until you found Elijah, and of course, I guess the jury's out on him for a couple of years to see how he develops, but how much of a scramble was that to get that third receiver, and how much of a need was that to get that third receiver?
We felt it was fairly important, obviously, to do the search that we did. We play a lot of receivers, as you guys know, so one, to be able to have the depth, in practice, to be able to practice and give these guys the rest that they need in between practice reps, we thought was very important. So to bring a guy in who we know may be a little bit developmental, but who's a big, strong, fast guy, to give us some depth at that position here for the future. Like a guy like Ben Victor did last year. We knew he was a guy who needed to be developed, but he came on a lot faster than we thought.
Did you ever believe that Real Life Wednesdays, when it was first introduced, and you guys kind of started, that it would become a major factor in your recruiting? I mean, are you sitting here now a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit.
Yeah.
The impact it's had on, I think, not only on recruiting, but our players themselves, and that the fact that these guys are now more interested in doing more research on different fields of area, knowing that Coach Meyer is going to help them get to that point, I think has been a huge success.
And last one right there in the middle, Bill.
Coach, you mentioned that this whole process is starting to feel like the NFL a little bit. So what lessons are you taking, learning from their personnel people on how they handle free agency, the NFL draft? Is it similar? Is it different?
It's probably just a little bit similar in just the traits and their mindset of how they draft people, as far as film evaluation, character, their critical factors they look for at each position, more so on that end than, free agency and trades and salary caps and that sort of thing. So, there's certain NFL people that I know that I talk to that I trust and ask them what they look for, and so we'll continue to build, when you have successful people, you want to get advice from them, and that's kind of the way we look at it.
All right, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everyone.